Trey 600 with a niggas who run it. Yeah, 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 yeah. Trey 600 though, 3600. Trey 600 though, 3600. Trey 600 though, 3600. Trey 600 though, yeah. Trey 600 with a niggas.
My origins, you know, I'm my origins is born and birth, you know, Kansas City, Missouri, by way of Texas, to the Lions Den and Watts. You feel me? Watts, WATTS, Knicks and Guards. So I'm for the Knicks and Guards, man. You know, and I've been from that turf, from that side since 1969. We descended from Midwest and from the South. In that era, my parents did, and so that's how we ended up in Los Angeles, and I ended up in the Lions Den, and you know, in Texas. I mean, in Watts.
Right.
So basically, that's the origin of it.
Okay, and you want? Could you break down just as far as just the bounty hunter? You know what I mean, in your name, and just you know what I mean, what was some of the things that made you, you know what I mean, become a bounty hunter?
Oh wow. Well, that was kind of like 2 or 3 questions in one. So
I'm sorry. Sorry.
No problem. No, I got you. No problem. Basically, what started me out, I'm gonna answer that one first. What intrigued me was at a young age, you know, I started out like 13, 14, 15 years old, hanging out in the parking lots in my area, which was on 114th Street. Hanging out and watching a lot of my OG big homies, you know, in the first generation. It was older guys who was already in their 30s and 20s, late 20s and 20s and stuff like that. And so seeing these dudes, you know, walking around with the long perms or the big afros with the AC/DC brims or the canes and the pleated khakis and the tailors, I was intrigued by that. You know what I mean? That whole gangsterism persona. So I became intrigued by it. So that is what first drew my attention. What really drew my admiration and really put me all the way in was losing, you know, the death of my parents back to back and my little brother. So I went through a situation, a syndrome of my life where I experienced one half of my family get split in half at a young age, bro. And so it took a toll on me. And so instead of doing what normal black kids would do, caught up in the poverty-stricken ghettos at that time in that era, we talk about the 80s, the early 80s, the very early 80s, 1981 and 82 and 79, instead of me resorting to drugs, I resorted to a piece of me that was already embedded in me. I was born with it. You know, that was my temper, my anger. So I took my anger as far as my temper and I exploded it and I utilized it and I formulated this character who became Bounty Hunter BJ. And so by me already watching my OGs and watching my big homies, you know, coming off the porch, because at this time I'm living 2 different characteristic lives before I even got into that. I was heavy involved in sports. I went to school. I was dominant in school, and I went to sport because that was something that was mandatory in my household from my parents. Right. Like, you know, me and my siblings, you know, my parents weren't playing that shit, you know. We really had guidance and love in our household. So that played a major part in my life during the time when my parents was alive. So when I lost them, it was like it took a big chunk out of me. It was like I was missing something great, you know. And that was that guidance from my mother and my father. You know, so from that point, losing my mother, my little brother, and my father all back to back, instead of me resorting to drugs, bro, I just took the red suit for the devil, man. I became the devil himself for 30 years, man. And I didn't give a fuck, a shit, excuse my French, about nothing and nobody if it wasn't my siblings, my family, and my family for the Knicks and Guard, my hood. I didn't give a shit about nothing else. If you told me this was what our enemy, this was our enemy, then goddamn it, that's what it was. I was on that. All the above. Feel me? Right. So in 1979, 80, from 78, 79 was when I really went full-fledged, and I come off the porch all the way, and I was still in between my football uniforms, you know, my baseball uniforms, you know what I'm saying, and playing this character as this hood sports fanatic, but at the same token, my name is ringing from a gangbang perspective, you know what I mean?
Hey, okay, y'all know what's going on. Could y'all please subscribe to Trey 600? Say, man, thank y'all. Y'all done got us up to 15K. We striving for the 20, man. We striving for the 20. Please go subscribe. Trey 600, OG Persian Show, no mercy. Go get that, man.